Most cleaning advice tells you to just start, as if sheer willpower is enough to get you off the couch and into action. But for so many seniors across the United States, that approach just doesn't work anymore. Energy comes in shorter bursts, joints don't move like they used to, and frankly, the thought of tackling an entire room can feel more like punishment than progress. Yet there's a little-known trick, one that's quietly making the rounds in senior circles, that doesn't just help you clean, it actually makes you want to clean. It's not about setting timers, chugging coffee, or forcing yourself through the dreaded first 5 minutes. In fact, it begins before you even pick up a sponge, mop, or duster. This method flips the script on motivation, replacing that heavy I have to feeling with a genuine pull toward the task, almost like your space is inviting you in. One woman even swears it had her so eager to tidy up that she found herself vacuuming at 7 o'clock in the morning, and she's never been a morning person in her life. If you've ever sat there knowing you need to clean but just couldn't find that mental spark, hit like now, because what you're about to hear might change how you see cleaning forever. Zinnia Harlow was the kind of woman people in her neighborhood couldn't help but notice, not because she tried to stand out, but because her home always seemed to be in bloom. At 69, this retired florist from the sun-drenched town of Taos, New Mexico, was a walking embodiment of color. Her porch was an ever-changing display of geraniums, petunias, and climbing roses, each arranged with the same care she once gave to bridal bouquets in her little flower shop downtown. Neighbors would slow their cars just to take in the view, waving as Zineia stood on her front steps with soil under her nails and that warm, knowing smile of someone who spent decades coaxing beauty from the earth. But behind that cheerful facade was a very different reality, one she didn't invite neighbors to see. Since downsizing from her larger family home to this smaller bungalow 2 years ago, Zineia's living room had gradually transformed into what she called a temporary storage zone, though deep down she knew temporary had become permanent. Boxes from her old attic sat unopened against one wall, a stack of mismatched chairs leaned in the corner waiting for the right place, and her coffee table was buried under quilting fabric she intended to sort one of these days. Every item told a story, yet together they created a visual heaviness that made the once sunny space feel dim and overwhelming. And here's the thing, Zineia wasn't lazy. Far from it. She had spent her life on her feet, managing a business, raising 2 children, and caring for her late husband through his illness. She could work circles around people half her age when she was in her element. But when it came to tackling that living room, something inside her just stalled. It wasn't a matter of knowing how to clean, she could organize a room in her sleep, it was the starting that felt impossible. Each time she stepped into the space, her mind went blank. The to-do list in her head ballooned until even the smallest action felt meaningless. If you've ever stood in the doorway of a cluttered room and felt your shoulders drop, as if the room itself was telling you, not today, you know exactly what Zineia was up against. It's that stuck feeling, not physical exhaustion, but a mental freeze, that keeps so many seniors from reclaiming the spaces they love. And for Zineia, every day she avoided the mess chipped away at the pride she once felt about her home. She needed a way to bypass the mental wall entirely, and that's when she stumbled across a simple but life-changing shift that reignited her cleaning drive almost overnight. Here's what most cleaning advice gets wrong about seniors: it assumes the main obstacle is energy. People picture those over 60 needing more breaks or moving at a slower pace, and while that can be true, it's often not the real reason cleaning feels so hard to start. For many older adults, the real barrier isn't physical, it's meaning. If your space feels repetitive, uninspiring, or emotionally flat, your brain struggles to see the point in tidying it. Why rearrange the same dusty knickknacks you've looked at for 15 years? Why wipe down a table when no one but you will notice? It's not about ability, it's about purpose. Over time, this lack of meaning quietly chips away at motivation. In your younger years, cleaning was often tied to exciting events: a party, kids coming home from school, a new piece of furniture, even seasonal decor changes. These moments injected novelty into your environment, and novelty is a powerful psychological trigger. In fact, recent studies on aging and dopamine, a brain chemical linked to motivation, show that older adults experience stronger activation when something new or different enters their space. It's like the brain perks up and says, "This matters, let's do something about it." Routine alone rarely sparks that same reaction. That's why so many seniors report feeling an unexpected burst of energy after moving a piece of furniture, buying a new throw blanket, or hanging a fresh picture on the wall. The change isn't just visual, it tells your mind that the space is worth investing in again. On the flip side, when nothing changes for months or years, your surroundings become so familiar they fade into the background. The mess doesn't scream for attention, it just blends in, and cleaning starts to feel like busy work with no real payoff. This was exactly what Zinnia Harlow had been living with. Her living room hadn't had a meaningful update since the day she unpacked after downsizing. Every box, every chair, every pile of fabric looked the same day after day, week after week. Without even realizing it, her brain had stopped registering the clutter as something that needed fixing. It had just become part of the scenery. And because it didn't feel important anymore, her motivation flatlined. If you've ever walked into a room, glanced at the mess, and thought, "I'll deal with it later," only to have later turn into weeks or months, you've likely experienced this same mental roadblock. It's not about laziness, it's about your brain protecting its limited energy by focusing only on what feels urgent or rewarding. The good news? This barrier can be broken quickly and gently, without forcing yourself into long, exhausting cleaning sessions. It all starts with reintroducing a sense of specialness into your space, so your mind naturally wants to engage with it again. Have you noticed that it's easier to clean when the room feels special again? Tell me in the comments. Your answer might be the idea someone else needs to hear. Zinnia's turning point came on a completely ordinary Tuesday afternoon. She was at a small local shop, browsing without any real intention of buying, when she spotted it, a throw pillow unlike anything she owned. It was a deep turquoise with bold embroidered sunflowers, the kind of bright, joyful design that seemed to hum with life. She didn't need another pillow. She hadn't even been thinking about home decor. But something in her gut told her to take it home. And without realizing it, she had just stumbled upon what would become her secret weapon for instant cleaning motivation. When Zineia got back to her bungalow, she didn't put the pillow in the bedroom or tuck it away neatly on the porch where guests could see it. Instead, she walked it straight into her living room, the very room she'd been avoiding for months. She plopped it down right in the middle of the mess, on the sagging couch she hadn't sat on without moving piles of fabric in ages. The effect was instant. That vibrant turquoise stood out like a jewel in a gravel driveway, almost shouting, "I don't belong in this chaos." Here's where the psychology kicks in. A fresh focal point, especially one that brings genuine joy, creates what researchers call a harmony gap in your brain. Your mind instinctively wants the rest of the environment to match the new, positive stimulus. In other words, once something beautiful and fresh is in place, you feel an unconscious pull to make the surrounding space worthy of it. For seniors, this works even better because it flips the cleaning narrative. Instead of tidying because you should, you're tidying because you want to highlight and honor something you love. It's no longer about slogging through chores, it's about curating your space like a gallery for your favorite things. For Zineia, that meant a small but powerful shift. She didn't think, "I have to clean this whole room." She thought, "This pillow will look even better if the coffee table is clear." So she cleared it. Then she noticed the stack of magazines on the floor next to the couch, so she tucked those away. The more she cleared, the more the pillow seemed to settle in, and the better the whole room felt. What had been a stagnant, overwhelming environment just hours before was now slowly transforming into a space that felt alive again. This is why the anchor object works, because it triggers motivation from a place of joy, not obligation. The object doesn't have to be expensive or large. It could be a bright vase, a new picture frame, or even a fresh plant. The key is that it feels new, visually stands out, and makes you want to create harmony around it. And while that pillow alone got Zineia moving, there was one more twist she added, a clever mental trick that made this method work instantly every single time she used it. It's the part most people overlook, and for Zineia, it was the difference between cleaning once and keeping the motivation going day after day. Zineia's anchor object trick worked wonders on its own, but she soon realized there was a way to supercharge the effect, a mental shift so simple, yet so powerful, it turned light tidying into an almost magnetic urge to keep going. She called it her Showtime Rule. The idea came to her one afternoon when she was chatting on the phone with a friend from her gardening club, someone she hadn't seen in months. They made tentative plans for a quick visit the following week, and as Zineia glanced toward her living room, her mind instantly pictured her friend stepping through the door. But instead of panicking about the mess, something unexpected happened. She imagined walking her friend through the house as if giving a short tour, pointing out little things she loved about her home. That vision sparked a completely different kind of energy. The next morning, she decided to test it. She walked into her living room and pretended an old friend was arriving in exactly 5 minutes. Not a whole hour, not whenever she could get around to it, 5 minutes. She stood by the doorway, took in the scene, and thought, what would I want her to notice first? Of course, her eyes went straight to the bright turquoise sunflower pillow, the anchor object she'd placed days earlier. She fluffed it, positioned it squarely on the couch, and suddenly the mess around it looked even more out of place. From there, she moved quickly, but without the weight of dread. She straightened the side table, cleared a couple of teacups from the coffee table, tossed a stray magazine into the recycling bin, and tucked the stack of quilting fabric into a nearby basket. It was like preparing a stage before the curtain went up. The room began to look inviting, not perfect, but intentional. And with each small fix, she felt herself shift from cleaning because she had to into curating a space she wanted to share. That's the magic of the Showtime Rule. It reframes cleaning as a short burst of purposeful action rather than a never-ending chore. Seniors in particular find it effective because it taps into pride, hospitality, and personal style, all of which often run deep after decades of creating a home that reflects who they are. And unlike the exhausting deep clean mentality, this method works in bite-sized bursts that match the natural rhythms and energy levels of life after 60. For Zineia, this mental game kept her from falling back into the "I'll do it later" trap. Even on slow mornings, she'd walk into the living room, imagine that 5-minute friend visit, and instantly know what to do first. Over time, her home stayed neater without marathon cleaning days, and she started inviting people over more often, something she hadn't done in years. If you use this today, what object would be your anchor? Tell me in the comments. You might just inspire someone else to fall back in love with their space. The reason Zineia's anchor object and Showtime Rule work so well, especially for seniors in the United States, is because they're the opposite of the outdated just start approach. That old advice assumes you can summon the mental and physical stamina to dive into a big task and power through until it's finished. But let's be honest, for most people over 60, life doesn't work in those long, uninterrupted bursts anymore. Energy arrives in pockets. Joints stiffen. Attention naturally shifts. And forcing yourself into marathon cleaning sessions often leads to burnout before you've even reached the halfway point. What makes this method different is that it's designed for short, gentle cleaning sessions, the kind you can do without overexerting yourself or dreading the process. You're not staring down an overwhelming to-do list. You're simply focusing on one visually exciting object and letting that small spark naturally pull you into action. There's no pressure to do it all. The beauty is that once you start, momentum often takes over without you having to push. And here's something even more powerful. It brings back a sense of pride of ownership in spaces that might have lost their sparkle after years of familiarity. Many seniors have lived in the same home for decades. Over time, the rooms stop feeling new, and the excitement of caring for them can fade. You still love your home, but it doesn't give you that "I can't wait to show this off" feeling. The anchor object changes that instantly. It's a visual cue that says, this space is worth tending to again. That emotional shift is far more sustainable than a pep talk about just starting. There's also a cultural moment happening right now that makes this method even more relevant, the dopamine decor trend. It's all over TikTok, Pinterest, and Facebook senior groups, small, joy-sparking upgrades that create an immediate emotional lift. Younger people are using it to beat cleaning procrastination, but seniors are finding it even more effective. Why? Because it plays into the wisdom of knowing you don't need to redo your whole home to feel happier in it. Sometimes, the tiniest change, a bold vase, a new lamp, or even a fresh table runner, can reawaken your connection to a room. And here's the kicker: unlike Just Start, which often fizzles after the first burst of energy, the anchor object and Showtime rule keep working day after day. You see that focal point every time you walk into the room, and it's a constant, gentle nudge toward keeping the space in harmony. It's not about forcing motivation, it's about creating an environment that motivates you. When cleaning becomes about showcasing what you love instead of slogging through what you dread, it stops being a chore and starts being an act of care, for both your home and yourself. That's something Just Start advice will never give you. Within just a week of trying the anchor object and Showtime rule, Zineia's living room no longer felt like the heavy, closed-off space she had been avoiding for months. And the most surprising part? She never once blocked out an entire afternoon for cleaning day. Instead, every small burst of motivation sparked by that bright turquoise sunflower pillow led naturally into the next. One day it was straightening the coffee table. The next, it was folding the quilt draped over the chair. Another day, she found herself finally opening a box that had been sitting untouched since her move. By the end of the week, the transformation was undeniable. The boxes were gone, the chairs had been placed where they belonged, and the room had an openness she hadn't felt since she first moved in. The pillow sat proudly on the couch, but now it was surrounded by a space that matched its energy, warm, inviting, and uncluttered. Zineia quickly realized that part of what kept her momentum alive was variety. The pillow that had started it all didn't have to be the only anchor object. Soon, she began rotating her focal point to keep the novelty fresh. One week, it was a vase of fresh sunflowers she clipped from her own garden. Another week, it was a seasonal quilt in autumn tones draped over the back of the couch. Each change reignited that harmony gap in her brain, gently pushing her to keep the room in order so the new focal point could shine. The shift wasn't just about the room, it was about how she felt in it. For the first time in a long time, Zineia enjoyed sitting in her living room with a cup of tea, without her eyes constantly landing on piles of unfinished business. The space had stopped feeling like a reminder of what she hadn't done and started feeling like a place she wanted to be. Hosting friends became easier, too. Instead of scrambling to tidy before visitors, she was already living in a space that felt guest-ready most of the time. But more importantly, even on the days when no one came by, Zineia found herself smiling as she walked into the room. She wasn't cleaning to impress anyone, she was caring for her space because she genuinely liked being in it again. And that quiet joy was the real transformation. After 60, the real key to staying motivated isn't about pushing yourself harder, setting strict cleaning schedules, or trying to summon endless willpower. It's about making your home feel worth caring for again. When a space feels alive, joyful, and connected to who you are now, not just who you were years ago, taking care of it stops being a burden and starts being something you look forward to. Zineia didn't force herself into marathon cleaning sessions. She simply created a spark, and that spark made the rest happen naturally. Her method wasn't about perfection or speed, it was about pride, comfort, and creating an environment she loved waking up to. And here's the truth: once you find your spark, whether it's a pillow, a vase of flowers, or a favorite seasonal quilt, you'll never look at cleaning the same way again. The work will feel lighter, the results will last longer, and the process will actually lift your mood instead of draining it. If Zineia's method gave you even the tiniest spark today, hit that like button, share this with a friend over 60 who could use a little motivation, and subscribe, because your next chapter should feel lighter, brighter, and beautifully yours.